learners, today we are going to discuss about another important aspect of environmental impact assessment, that is environmental impact statement. First we have to understand that what is environmental impact statement. An environmental impact statement under United States environmental law, it is a document that is required by the National Environmental Policy Act (NEPA) for certain actions that those are significantly affecting the quality of the human environment. We can consider it as a tool for decision making. It also helps in describing the positive and negative environmental effects of a proposed action, and it usually lists one or more alternative actions that may be chosen instead of the action which is described in the environmental impact statement. Several United States governments require the document similar to an environmental impact statement that will be submitted to the state for certain actions. Environmental impact statement that has the purpose to serve as an action, that is forcing device to ensure that the policies and goals that defined in the act are infused into the ongoing programs and actions of the federal government. It is a supplementary disclosure document. It will be used by the federal officials in combination with other pertinent material to plan actions and make certain decisions of the proposed project. The final environmental impact assessment report, which is normally considered as environmental impact statement. Most of the national environmental laws have specified the content of environmental impact statement to be uniform. Multilateral and bilateral financial institutions have also defined an environmental impact statement. Ideally, environmental impact statement must have the components like executive summary, policy, legal and administrative framework, and also description of the environment of that particular proposed project in that particular area, and description of the proposed project in detail, and significant environmental impacts of that proposed project after establishing, and socio-economic analysis of the project impacts, and identification and analysis of alternatives, mitigation action, and or otherwise we can say that mitigation management plan and environmental management plan for the proposed activity, and monitoring program, how to execute this one, and if suppose if any knowledge gaps are there for execution, those knowledge gaps also we have to address, and public involvement is also most important criteria, and list of references, appendices like documents or photographs of that particular area, that entire environment, whether it is published or unpublished data or the terms of reference have to be compulsory addressed, and the consulting team composition and everything has been established, and also the notes of public consultation sessions also have to be incorporated. So environmental impact statement, it will have an introduction that includes a statement of the purpose and the requirement of the proposed action need to be spelled out. A description of the exaggerated environment also have to be incorporated. A range of changes to the proposed action and the alternatives are that are considered the heart of the environmental impact statement. That is the most important part. And also an analysis of the environmental impacts of each of the possible alternatives. That means not only one, each and every aspect what we have numbered and what we have prioritized, that analysis part must be incorporated. So the topics which consist of the impacts to threatened or the endangered species, or the topic may be air and water quality impacts, or it may be the impact to historic and cultural sites, or sometimes it is a significant importance to indigenous people, that is also most important. Social and economic impacts to the local communities, like consideration of their attributes like impacts to available housing stock, economic impacts to business, property values, aesthetics and noise within the affected area. So even though they are appearing like very small issues, but they have a greater impact on that. Cost and schedule analysis for each alternative, that includes cost and timeline to mitigate expected impacts, to determine if the proposed action can be completed at an acceptable cost and within reasonable amount of time or not. The environmental impact statement, we can define it is a statement that provides a record of the statistics data and also the approximate calculation that is obtained from the various steps involved in environmental impact assessment procedure. So, the regulatory authorities or the decision makers, they will follow the actual information provided by the environmental impact statement and take decision whether to approve or disapprove or suggest for considerable modifications of a proposed project. So, you must have understood that the importance and the significance of environmental impact statement in the environmental impact assessment procedure. The environmental impact statement consists, there are many parts. In the three major parts I would like to discuss. Part 1 deals with the declaration of the criteria and methodology which is used in particular project. That means the procedures are not same for all projects. So, it will provide a summary and crucial issues in the form of a statement that part 1 deals. If we will consider part 2, it deals with the concept and rationale to the proposed activity. That means the explanatory studies like needed, planning, alternatives, site selection, site description, conditions, description of proposed development and construction activities and programs. So, these have to be considered in part 2 of environmental impact statement. Now, we comes to the part 3 of the statement. It deals with the environmental impact assessment proposed areas. That means it surveys the proposed activity areas, basically the land use, landscape and visual quality, geology, topography and soils, hydrology and water quality, everything, air quality and climate, terrestrial and aquatic ecology, noise, transport, socio-economic and interrelationships between the effects. So, the NEPA process is designed to involve the public and gather the best available information in a single place so that the decision makers can be fully informed when they make their choices. The process of environmental impact statement have lot of steps which are involved, just like environmental impact assessment as well as strategic environment assessment. For example, some of the important stages I would like to mention over here. That is the proposal stage. In this stage, the needs and objectives of a project that has been decided, but the project has not been financed. And if we will see the categorical exclusion, normally we can call it as a CATEX. It is discussed the government may exempt any agency from the process. So, the agency can then proceed with the project and skip the remaining steps. Next comes to the environmental assessment. So, in this the proposal is analyzed in addition to the local environment with the aim to reduce the negative impacts of the development on the area. Once it is finding of no significant impact, that is FONSI, that occurs when no significant adverse impacts are identified in an environmental assessment. It allows to lead agency to proceed without having to complete environmental impact statement. So, there are certain rules are there, certain flexibilities are there to promote and to facilitate the project proposals. So, it is not at all a barrier. So, environmental impact statement There are also another steps are there. Next we will consider the scoping step. The first meetings are held to discuss existing laws, obviously the available information and the research is required. So the tasks which are divided up and lead group is selected, so that the decision makers and all the people, those who are involved with the project, can attend the meetings. They can express their views and then ideas. And next come to the notice. That means the public has to be notified. It is a mandatory that the agency is preparing an environmental impact statement. So the agency also provides the public with the information regarding how they can become involved in the process. That means it is not an hiding factors. So it will bring it to the notice of the general public, those who are directly involved in that particular project. So the agency should be announced its project proposal with a notice in the Federal Register. So the notice is in local media. It may be in the form of letters to the citizens and also in groups that it knows are likely to be interested. So they have to identify the groups. And the citizens and groups are welcome to send in comments, helping the agency to identify the issues it must definitely address in the environmental impact statement. After that, they have to draft environmental impact statement. So that is DEIS. That is based on both agency expertise and issues raised by the public, and the agency prepares a draft EIS with a full description of the affected environment. That means before drafting an environmental impact statement, they have to approach the general public and then collect their views and a reasonable range of alternatives, and an analysis of the impacts of the each alternative have to be incorporated. And in the comment step, the affected individuals, those who have the opportunity to provide feedback through written and public hearing statements, they can provide. So this process facilitate the general public also openly come and then express their views in a handwritten statement. And then it comes to the final EIS for the proposed action. So based on the comments on the draft environmental impact statement, the agency writes a final impact statement and announces its proposed action. So the public is not invited to comment on this because it is already final. But if they are still unhappy with this approach or this decision, or feel that the agency has missed a major issue, or they may protest the environmental impact statement to the director of the agency. So that means at the last step, after finalizing the environmental impact assessment, after completing the all procedures, there is a facilitation for the final draft also to approach the director of the agency. So in that case, the director may either ask the agency to revise the environmental impact statement or explain to the protester why their complaints are not actually taken care of. So we can understand that there is a transparency. So then there is a re-evaluation, that is prepared following an approved final environmental impact statement. When unforeseen changes to the proposed action or its impacts occurs, or when a substantial period of time that has been passed between approval of an action and the planned start of a said action. So based on the significance of these changes, 3 outcomes may result from a re-evaluation report. So we can expect. The first one is the action may proceed with no substantive changes to the final environmental impact statement. And the second one is significant impacts are expected with the change that can be adequately addressed in a supplemental environmental impact statement, or the circumstances that force a complete change in the nature and scope of the proposed action, thereby voiding the pre-existing final impact assessment statement. if applicable. So, requiring the lead agency to restart the NEPA process and prepare a new environmental impact statement to encompass the changes. The supplemental environmental impact statement that is typically prepared after either a final environmental impact statement or the record of decision that has been issued and new environmental impacts that were not considered in the original environmental impact statements which are discovered. So, that requires to lead the agency to re-evaluate its initial decision and consider new alternatives to avoid or mitigate the new impacts. The supplemental environmental impact statements, which are also prepared when the size and scope of a federal action changes. When a significant period of time has been lapsed, for example, since the final environmental impact statement was completed to account for changes in the surrounding environment during that time, or when all of the proposed alternatives in an environmental impact statement are deemed to have unacceptable environmental impacts and new alternatives are proposed. And the next step is record of decision, a ROD. Once all the protests are resolved, the agency issues a record of decision, which is its final action, which is prior to implementation. If members of the public are still dissatisfied with the outcome, they may sue the agency in federal court. So, that means there is a lot of flexibility, there is a lot of transparency. In general, the agencies responsible for preparing an environmental assessment or environmental impact statement, they do not compile the document directly, but outsource this work to private sector consulting firms with expertise in the proposed action and its anticipated adverse effects on the general environment of that particular proposed activity site. Because of the intense level of detail required in analyzing the alternatives which are presented in an environmental impact statement, like documents may take years or even decades to compile, and also it will compose of multiple volumes that can be thousands to tens of thousands of pages in length. To avoid potential conflicts in securing required permits and also approvals after the final recording is being issued, and the lead agency will often coordinate with the stakeholders at all levels and also resolve any conflicts to the greatest extent possible during the environmental impact statement process. The proceedings in this fashion definitely helps to avoid intergency conflicts and potential lawsuits after the lead agency reaches its decision. So, dear learner, you must be understand that how important the environmental impact assessment statement, and also it is a major part of the environmental impact assessment procedure. So, we will come up with the next session with the some more details of the environmental impact assessment statement. Thank you.